Welcome back, dear listener, to the world asleep. Tonight, we walk beneath the beating heart of Christendom, under marble floors and frescoed ceilings, below the echo of choirs and the shimmer of candlelight, to the most secret rooms in the world. Hidden beneath the Vatican lies a labyrinth of silence, the Archivum Secretum, the Secret Archives, a vault so vast it runs for nearly 50 miles beneath the City of Saints. Down there, the air is cool and dry. Dust drifts like faint incense over shelves of leather-bound tomes. Each document, papal decrees, letters, forbidden manuscripts, carries the weight of centuries. Somewhere among them rest the private diaries of popes, the testimonies of the Inquisition, the sealed confessions of kings, and perhaps the pages that were never meant to be read at all. For hundreds of years, the Church has guarded these secrets, not with chains or iron, but with silence. Only a handful of scholars are ever granted entry, their steps echoing softly down the narrow aisles like prayers left unfinished. So tonight, as the bells of Rome fade into the distance, let your thoughts drift below the earth. Imagine the stillness of the stone, the endless corridors where history itself sleeps. We will walk softly there, through the Vatican's shadowed vaults, and listen for what still breathes behind locked doors. If you find peace in these quiet journeys through time and wish to help us continue making them, your support, a simple like, a gentle subscribe, helps us keep the lights glowing in these long, silent corridors of history. Tell me, before we begin, from where are you listening tonight, and what hour has found you? Perhaps it is late, the world outside dim and still, the perfect time to wander through secrets whispered beneath the City of Saints. Now, take a deep breath. The doors are closed, the torches flicker, and somewhere in the dark, the past begins to whisper. Chapter 1. The Doors That Never Open. At the edge of the Vatican gardens, where the sweet scent of cypress mingles with the incense rising from distant chapels, there stands a door few have ever touched. It is bronze, ancient, and unmarked. Its surface, worn by centuries of hands that never lingered, bears only the faintest traces of time, scratches and marks that seem to vanish the moment you notice them. Behind it lies a corridor, a passage so narrow and shadowed that even the bravest dare not walk too fast. The walls here, lined with stone and iron, seem to murmur their secrets as the air grows cooler with each step. This door, though hidden in plain sight, is not locked by guards or bolts. It is locked by something more powerful: silence. Few have the privilege to cross this threshold. Fewer still are granted the right to glimpse what lies beyond. What awaits is not just the weight of history, but of mystery itself. The ancient archives beneath the Vatican hold more than knowledge. They carry the forgotten heartbeat of an empire that has long since slipped into myth. Here, beneath the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, beneath the very city that claims to hold the seat of Christian power, a forgotten world stirs. The Archivum Secretum Vaticanum, the secret archives of the Vatican, stretch like a vast labyrinth beneath the City of Saints, a place where the past is carefully curated and sealed away. If you were to walk through this sacred corridor, you would find yourself descending into a space where light is scarce and time seems to slow. As your footsteps echo faintly against the stone floor, the air feels thick and cold, weighed down by the knowledge that surrounds you. The shelves, towering high and stretching endlessly in all directions, are packed with the ancient parchment, brittle leather, and wax seals that have borne witness to centuries of history, of power, and of secrecy. The light of the torches trembles as it touches the first row of volumes, casting long shadows over rows and rows of carefully preserved documents. And what of these documents? What secrets do they conceal? Within this great subterranean archive lies more than just ancient papal decrees or sacred scrolls. Here, hidden beneath layers of dust and tradition, rest the diaries of popes, the trial records of the Knights Templar, and manuscripts that speak of knowledge long thought to be lost to time. Yet, perhaps most intriguing of all, are the texts that have never been seen, sealed away behind walls of stone, iron, and parchment. Their content, their meaning, their very purpose, all remain a mystery, known only to those entrusted with the keys to the vault. What could lie behind the great bronze door? Could it be something so powerful, so important, that it is kept locked away to preserve the fragile balance of faith and knowledge? Or is it the very nature of secrecy that makes it more enticing, more valuable than any truth could ever be? For hundreds of years, the Vatican has carefully guarded these archives, not with chains or iron bars, but with silence. The gates to this hidden world have remained firmly closed to all but a select few, those few entrusted to preserve the knowledge of centuries past. Only a handful of scholars have ever been granted entry, and even they are watched with the utmost care. They are escorted through the endless shelves, their steps echoing in the narrow corridors, their whispers the only sound that breaks the sacred silence of the archives. The archives themselves stretch for nearly 50 miles beneath the city, tunnels and chambers that seem to wind endlessly beneath the Vatican's walls, hidden from view and yet teeming with the very essence of history. Scholars who have entered these hallowed halls describe the experience not as one of discovery, but of reverence. The air is cooler than the world above, the smell of old paper and wax heavy in the dimly lit chambers. Each document, whether it be a letter sealed in gold or a papal bull, carries the weight of centuries. Some have not seen the light of day for hundreds of years, their contents forever locked away behind the silence of the church. For those few permitted to enter, there is a sacred ritual involved, one that marks the boundaries between those who are worthy and those who remain outside, waiting. Scholars must approach each document with reverence, gloved hands gently turning the yellowing pages, their breath held as they read the words inscribed within. Some pages remain unread, locked away in the deepest corners of the archives, their secrets kept under lock and key. What secrets are hidden behind these ancient walls? Some speak of the trial records of the Knights Templar, whose trial for heresy in the early 14th century marked one of the darkest chapters in history. The Templars, once knights who fought in the Crusades, were accused of blasphemy, of practicing forbidden rites, and of treason against the Pope. Their trials, though long thought to have been lost to history, may still be preserved in these ancient documents, their dark secrets locked away for centuries, their meaning waiting to be uncovered. Others speak of the long-lost Gospels, of sacred texts that predate the official teachings of the Church, their very existence questioned by historians and theologians alike. The so-called lost books of the Bible, thought to have been suppressed or erased by the early Church Fathers, may still lie hidden within the archives. Could these ancient manuscripts hold answers to questions about the origins of Christianity? Questions that have never been answered by the official records of the Church? Perhaps most intriguingly of all, the Vatican archives hold something much older, something that has been hidden since before the Church's rise to power. Esoteric knowledge, texts and manuscripts that speak of the mysteries of the universe, of alchemy and astrology, of ancient rituals and rites that were long forgotten, may still be waiting in the shadows of these darkened halls. What secrets do these texts hold? What knowledge, lost to time, could they reveal? There is a pervasive feeling that the deeper you go into the archives, the more the past begins to breathe. The air, heavy with the scent of parchment and ink, seems to carry with it the weight of centuries of history. The silence is almost oppressive, pressing in on you, filling the space with a sense of foreboding and reverence. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not what is contained within the archives, but what lies in the very act of secrecy itself. What is it that the Church has chosen to hide, and why? Some claim that the archives are simply a place for records and documents to be preserved, an archive like any other. But others believe that the Vatican's secrecy holds a much deeper meaning. What if the archives are not just a storage space for forgotten texts, but a place where the boundaries between history, faith and power are blurred beyond recognition? It is easy to speculate, but in the end, the true answer may never be known. The archives, like the Vatican itself, are a place of mystery, a place where the past is hidden away, where secrets are kept locked behind layers of stone and silence. But just as the ancient city of Rome holds secrets beneath its streets, so too does the Vatican hold its own, waiting for those brave enough to uncover them. As you stand before the closed doors of the Vatican archives, imagine the silence that hangs in the air, the stories that have been left untold, the pages that have never been turned, the whispers of the past frozen in time waiting to be heard. And so we stand at the threshold, eyes wide with curiosity, hearts heavy with the weight of what lies beyond. The door is locked and the archives remain hidden, but the questions, like the echoes of ancient footsteps, linger in the silence. Chapter 2. The Library of Shadows. Beneath the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, where the murmur of prayer mixes with the sound of footsteps echoing across cold marble, there lies a secret, one that only a few have ever touched. Beyond the Vatican's gilded halls, beyond the grand chambers adorned with art and splendour, stretches a quiet world that few ever see, the hidden corridors of the Archivum Secretum Vaticanum. This subterranean labyrinth was not built merely to house scrolls and manuscripts. It is an archive of silence, of mystery, and of truth locked away in the deep recesses of time. To walk through the archives is to step into the heart of a place where history and myth blend together, where every document holds a whispered promise, a story that has yet to be fully revealed. The Vatican archives were formally established in 1612 by Pope Paul V, a man whose reign marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Church's history, one where information was no longer shared openly, but stored in secret, behind lock and key. Before then, the Church had maintained a somewhat open policy regarding its records. However, as the Church's power grew, so too did its need for secrecy. The archives became the Vatican's most sacred space, holding not only the documents that shaped the faith, but the whispers of the Church's most ancient and mysterious traditions. At the core of the archives lies a collection that has been amassed over the course of centuries, a vast, sprawling accumulation of papal documents, letters, decrees, and records of matters both divine and worldly. Here, sealed behind locked doors, rest the most coveted treasures of the Catholic Church, documents that span the rise and fall of empires, the birth of new religions, the suppression of heresies, and the establishment of traditions that still govern the world today. The mere presence of these records gives them a weight, an atmosphere that is unlike any other. Walking through the archives, one can almost hear the whispers of the past carried in the dust that settles on each page. The atmosphere is thick with the weight of centuries, with the voices of popes, kings, and scholars who have passed through these halls. The shelves stretch for miles in every direction, and with every turn the silence deepens. It is said that the deeper you go, the more you feel the presence of the past, as though it has been absorbed into the very walls. But what exactly is stored in these vast shadowy vaults? The world has been allowed a glimpse into the archives only on rare occasions, when scholars, historians, or Vatican officials are granted the privilege to view the materials housed within. But these brief glimpses have only fueled the mystery, for what they reveal is tantalizing, yet only the surface of what lies hidden beneath the surface. Among the many treasures in the Vatican's archives are the trial records of the Templars, those knights who rose to prominence during the Crusades and whose secrets were exposed in the early 14th century. These records document the charges brought against the Templars, accusations of heresy, blasphemy, and the worship of dark powers. The trials were a key moment in church history, one that resulted in the suppression of the Order of the Templars, and many believe the Vatican holds the full, unedited transcripts of those trials, documents that may contain startling revelations about the true nature of the Templars' activities. Alongside the Templar records are the papal diaries, kept by the pontiffs themselves, detailing their thoughts, decisions and actions during some of the most significant moments in history. These diaries are not public, nor are they likely to be seen in our lifetime, but they contain the intimate reflections of the men who shaped the course of the Church and the world. Who were these men, really? What did they know of power, of belief, of politics, and what did they hide? These diaries are said to be kept in a room so secret, so remote, that only a select few are ever allowed access. What secrets do they contain about the men who wore the mitre and wielded the keys to heaven? But the most elusive, perhaps, are the texts that speak of forbidden knowledge, esoteric manuscripts, alchemical texts, and books of mysticism that have been kept locked away for centuries. These texts speak of the mysteries of the universe, of the hidden forces that shape the world, and of ancient knowledge that the Church may have once deemed dangerous or heretical. Some believe that the Church has guarded these texts because they contain truths that could challenge the very foundation of Christianity itself. Are these the secrets of the Gnostics, the ancient religious sects whose beliefs were suppressed by the early Church? Or are they the remnants of ancient wisdom that was thought to be lost to the world? The archives hold these secrets, but their contents are known only to a few. The esoteric knowledge contained in these manuscripts is not just a collection of arcane symbols and forgotten spells. It is a reflection of the Church's own history, a history marked by power, conflict, and transformation. It is a reminder that the Vatican, like the world it governs, is not a single entity, but a complex, multifaceted institution that has evolved over the centuries. From its earliest days as a small Christian community in Rome to its current status as the spiritual centre of the Catholic faith, the Church has been a force for both good and evil, for light and dark. The records held in the Vatican archives are a mirror of that evolution, and within them lie the answers to questions that have haunted humanity for centuries. What is the true nature of the Church's power? What role does it play in the unfolding of history? And what truths have been concealed in the shadows of its vaults? As you wander deeper into the archives, you might notice the faintest sense of unease creeping up your spine. The silence here is oppressive, the stillness suffocating. It is not just the quiet of an old building, it is the silence of a place that holds power beyond the comprehension of the outside world. It is the silence of a place that guards its secrets fiercely, refusing to release them even to the most ardent seeker. Perhaps the most unsettling thing about the Vatican archives is not what is contained within, but the fact that these secrets exist at all. The Church, after all, is supposed to be a beacon of light, a source of truth and wisdom for the faithful. And yet, behind these sealed doors lies a different story, a story of hidden knowledge, of suppressed truths, and of the complex, shadowed relationship between faith and power. The Vatican archives are not just a repository of documents, they're a reflection of the very nature of the Church itself, a place where light and darkness, knowledge and secrecy, faith and doubt coexist in a delicate balance. As we step back from the archives, leaving the silence behind, we are left with a single, lingering question. Why does the Church guard these secrets so fiercely? What is it that they fear might be revealed? And what will happen when the vaults are finally opened and the world is allowed to see what has been hidden for so long? The doors remain closed, the secrets still locked away. But even in their silence, the archives speak. They whisper of power, of faith, of the choices made by those who've come before us. And perhaps, in time, the world will come to understand what lies beneath those locked doors, when the light of truth finally pierces the darkness. Chapter 3: The Trial of Silence. There is an old saying in the Vatican, whispered in the darkened corners of the archives, that the most dangerous secret is not the truth, but the power to silence it. In the labyrinthine halls beneath the city of saints, where the weight of history presses heavily upon the stone, the silence feels like a living thing. It moves through the shelves like a shadow, slipping between the pages of forbidden texts, lying still upon the ink that has not seen the light of day for centuries. The Vatican has long been a keeper of secrets, but there are some truths that, once revealed, are never meant to be spoken aloud. The trial of the Templars, one of the most infamous and secretive chapters in the Church's history, is a prime example of the weaponized silence that the Vatican has wielded for centuries. In the early 14th century, when King Philip IV of France sought to seize the wealth of the Templar order, he accused them of heresy, blasphemy, and a host of other dark crimes. The charges were spurious, the evidence often fabricated, but the outcome was anything but. The trials were held in secret, far from the gaze of the public, in the hidden chambers of the Church. And it was within these shadowed rooms that the silence of the Vatican took its most potent form. The Templars were not just knights who fought in the Crusades. They were a brotherhood bound by a sacred vow of secrecy. They had guarded the holy places of Christianity, amassed wealth and power beyond measure, and stood as one of the most influential military orders in Europe. But with their success came envy, and when King Philip sought to destroy them, he knew that the power of their secrecy was not to be overcome by force. Instead, he used the Church to turn their silence against them. In the damp stone chambers where their trials were held, the Templars were forced to confess to crimes they did not commit, to betray their sacred vows under the weight of torture. The confessions that were extracted in those dark corners of the Vatican were not only forced, but carefully documented. The quill scratched against the parchment, recording their words as though each line was a link in the chain that would bind them to their fate. The process was not about uncovering truth, but about creating a narrative, a story that would justify the destruction of the order. And so the trial records were born, written in the ink of forced confessions, in the silence of those who had no choice but to speak what they were told to speak. These records are still kept, locked away in the deepest vaults of the Vatican archives, carefully preserved for centuries, though few have ever been allowed to read them. They tell a story of betrayal, not only of the Templars, but of the very idea of truth. The Vatican, in its desire to maintain its power, chose silence as its most potent weapon. But the Templars were not the only victims of this silence. The trial of Galileo Galilei, conducted a century later, serves as another chilling example of the power of the Church to suppress truth. Galileo, the great astronomer, was condemned for teaching that the Earth revolved around the Sun, a truth that contradicted the Church's teachings. In the early 17th century, when Galileo dared to speak out against the established doctrine of the Church, he was not merely opposed, he was silenced. His works were banned, and he was forced to recant his beliefs under threat of excommunication. His trial, like that of the Templars, was a battle not of ideas, but of control. The Church did not seek to understand Galileo's discoveries. It sought only to suppress them, to erase them from history. In both of these trials, the Church demonstrated its greatest strength, not in the truth it held, but in the silence it imposed. The Vatican's power lies not only in its ability to dictate what is true, but in its ability to control what is never said, what is never heard. This silence is not an absence of sound, but a presence. It is the weight of centuries of power that rests in the vaults beneath the city. It is a silence that fills the air like incense, thick and suffocating, a silence that is as much a part of the Vatican's history as the words that have been spoken in its name. This silence is not merely the absence of sound, it is a weapon used by the Church to control not only the present, but the past and the future. When truths are hidden away, they become stories, myths, legends, and when those stories are buried deep enough, they are forgotten. The records of the Templars, the trial of Galileo, the countless other suppressed voices, all are kept in the vaults of the Vatican, sealed away behind doors that are locked with silence. But even in silence, the truth lingers. Like a faint echo, it reverberates through the centuries. The confessions of the Templars, written under duress, continue to haunt the Vatican's walls. The words of Galileo, recanted in fear, continue to challenge the authority of the Church. The Vatican may have suppressed these truths, but it cannot erase them. For as long as the archives remain sealed, as long as the silence endures, these truths will continue to whisper from the shadows. Perhaps this is why the Vatican guards its archives so fiercely. Not because the documents contained within them are dangerous, but because the silence they represent is. The silence is the Church's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. For as long as the records remain locked away, as long as the secrets are kept, the Vatican can control what is remembered and what is forgotten. But the truth, like a flame, cannot be fully extinguished. It flickers in the darkness, waiting to be seen. And so, we are left with the question, what truths does the Vatican fear? What is it that must remain silent in order for the Church to survive? The trials of the Templars, the condemnation of Galileo, and the countless other suppressed voices that have been erased from history. These are the echoes of a silence that continues to reverberate through the halls of the Vatican. In the quiet of the archives, the past whispers its secrets. And though the Church may have chosen silence as its weapon, silence too has its own power. The question remains, what kind of truth must be hidden to survive? Chapter 4. The Forbidden Manuscripts. Beneath the vaults of the Vatican, deep within the shadows of centuries-old shelves, there are whispered secrets, texts so ancient, so hidden, that their very existence is debated by scholars and dreamers alike. These are the forbidden manuscripts, the apocryphal Gospels, and the fragments of forgotten knowledge that lie buried in the deep, untouched chambers of the Archivum Secretum. These are the texts that were not meant to be seen, the ones that have eluded history and yet continue to stir the imagination. The stories they tell are not recorded in the dusty pages of established doctrine, but rather in the quiet corners of esoteric thought. One such text, known only by fragments and legend, is the Chronicon of Enoch. This ancient manuscript, a supposed record of the first fallen angel, Enoch, is said to hold the hidden history of the world, a history long lost to the pages of the Bible. The text itself is believed to have been written in the lost languages of the early Hebrews, containing prophecies, descriptions of celestial beings, and knowledge about the universe that should never have passed into mortal hands. Though no complete version of the Chronicon exists, references to it appear in early Christian texts and among the Dead Sea Scrolls, suggesting that it was once a cornerstone of ancient mysticism. Yet, as with so many texts, the Chronicon of Enoch has been hidden from the public eye for centuries. The Vatican holds pieces of this manuscript, fragments so delicate and so powerful that they seem to shimmer with the weight of the unknown. Whether it is truly the account of an ancient patriarch or merely a work of mysticism created by an unknown hand, the Church has kept it under lock and key. Then there are the lost Gospels. These manuscripts, scattered across history and shrouded in mystery, offer an entirely different view of Jesus Christ, one that departs from the familiar narratives of the New Testament. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Judas are perhaps the most well-known among them, though many others remain hidden, their existence known only through the mentions of early church fathers who sought to suppress them. In these texts, Jesus is not merely the sacrificial lamb of Christian salvation, but a figure of wisdom and enlightenment, teaching his disciples not only how to live, but how to see the divine within themselves. The Vatican holds not only copies of these lost Gospels, but also private letters dating back to the early centuries of Christianity, discussing their contents. These letters, written by popes, bishops, and scholars, often describe the fear and intrigue surrounding the Gospels that did not make it into the official canon. Some of these letters discuss the controversies that arose when certain factions of the early Christian Church began to question the legitimacy of the Gospels that were being promoted by the Vatican. These manuscripts, though long suppressed, continue to fuel debates among theologians and scholars about what was lost to history and what truths may have been erased from the public record. But the forbidden manuscripts do not end with Gospels and ancient prophecies. The Vatican also houses a vast collection of alchemical texts, manuscripts filled with diagrams, symbols, and formulas that hint at a deeper knowledge of the natural world, one that transcends the material. These alchemical diagrams, once thought to be mere scribblings of forgotten scholars, are believed by some to contain the secret teachings of the ancient alchemists, a knowledge that could transform the soul and the body alike. Alchemy, in its essence, was not just a study of transforming base metals into gold, but a quest to understand the very nature of the universe, to see the world as it truly is, a web of interconnected forces, both physical and spiritual. The Vatican's alchemical collection includes fragments of these sacred texts, their cryptic symbols and diagrams pointing to a deeper, more hidden reality. These esoteric manuscripts are not merely texts of historical interest. They are the key to a forgotten knowledge, one that the Vatican has kept hidden for centuries. They speak not only of the world as we know it, but of the world as it could be, a world in which the boundaries between the physical and spiritual realms are no longer distinct. These manuscripts, though they have been suppressed and locked away, continue to inspire those who seek a deeper understanding of the mysteries of existence. But why are these manuscripts kept hidden? Why does the Vatican guard these texts so fiercely? Is it the content that is so dangerous, or is it the very idea of knowledge itself? Knowledge that lies beyond the control of the Church, beyond the authority of the Pope, beyond the confines of doctrine. The Church has long maintained that it is the guardian of truth, but what if these forbidden manuscripts contain truths that threaten the foundation of that authority? What if they reveal a deeper understanding of the divine, one that the Church is not prepared to embrace? Some argue that the true danger of these manuscripts lies not in their content, but in the very act of suppressing them. The human urge to imagine what lies beyond permitted knowledge is one that transcends time and culture. We are drawn to mystery, to the unknown, to the things that lie just beyond our understanding, and the Vatican's decision to keep these texts hidden, to silence them with its centuries-old power, only fuels the fire of curiosity. Some say truth hides not from light, the saying goes, but from eyes unready to see it. And perhaps that is the essence of the Vatican silence. These manuscripts, these texts, are not just dangerous because of what they contain, but because they challenge our perception of what truth is. They are the forbidden fruits of knowledge, and, The Church's role has been to guard them, to keep them out of reach, to protect not only the faithful but the very idea of faith itself. What would happen if these manuscripts were to be fully revealed to the world? What would happen to the Church if its secrets were laid bare, its power stripped away? It is in this sense that the forbidden manuscripts are both a symbol and a reflection of the human condition. We are drawn to mystery because we are built to seek knowledge, to seek truth, to seek the divine. But we are also bound by the limits of our own understanding, by the constraints of what we are allowed to know. And perhaps that is the true purpose of these texts, not to give us the answers we seek, but to make us question what we are told to believe. The Vatican holds many secrets within its archives, secrets that may never be fully revealed. And yet, even in their silence, these manuscripts continue to speak. They continue to challenge the boundaries of what we know, to whisper of a deeper reality that lies just beyond our reach. And perhaps in the end, that is the most powerful secret of all, that some truths are not meant to be seen, but to be imagined. Chapter 5. The Codex of Heaven and Earth. As the stone corridors of the Vatican's archives stretch endlessly into shadowed recesses, we are led not only into the depths of history, but into the very fabric of the universe itself. It is a world where the celestial and the terrestrial collide, where the maps of vanished kingdoms are intricately bound beside star charts that trace the heavens, where the language of myth intertwines with the language of science. These hidden rooms do not merely house the records of earthly power, but the reflections of humanity's ancient longing to understand its place in the cosmos. Among the countless scrolls, tomes and manuscripts in the Archivum Secretum Vaticanum, there exists a treasure trove of maps, not just of countries and continents, but of worlds lost to time. These maps are not mere tools for navigation, but windows into the soul of the past, depicting not only the geography of our world, but the myths, legends and mysteries that shaped how ancient civilizations saw the universe. Some of these maps are beautifully ornate, drawn in ink and gold on parchment that has yellowed with age. Others are simple sketches, lines and curves that hint at long-forgotten territories, places where no trace of civilization remains. Some of these lands are now only whispers in the winds, their names lost to history, but their maps remain, guarded by the silence of the Vatican's vaults. One such map, known only as the Mappa Mundi, depicts a vast and mythical world that stretches far beyond the boundaries of known geography. It shows kingdoms that were never meant to be, lands that exist only in the imagination of cartographers who dared to map not just the earth, but the limits of the human spirit. These maps are more than just geographical tools. They are the reflections of cultures grappling with their understanding of the world. They show the maps of the dead, the unexplored, and the unfathomable, places where time, geography, and myth all blur into one. But these maps are not confined to the realms of Earth. Among the scrolls hidden in the Vatican's deep chambers are the star charts drawn by the Jesuit astronomers of the 16th and 17th centuries. These scholars, who were among the brightest minds of their time, mapped not just the stars but the very architecture of the cosmos. Their charts are precise, their calculations meticulous, yet they also carry an air of wonder, a sense that even the most reasoned minds were filled with awe at the vastness of the heavens. The stars they charted were not merely points of light in the night sky. They were symbols of divine order, of a grand plan that stretched across the heavens beyond the reach of human understanding. What is most fascinating about these star charts is that they were drawn by men who had not just a scientific understanding of the universe, but a spiritual one. The Jesuit astronomers saw the cosmos not as a collection of distant suns and planets, but as a living, breathing creation, a manifestation of God's will. To them, the stars were not just celestial bodies, but the building blocks of a divine architecture. Their star charts were not simply maps, but reflections of their belief that the heavens were a mirror to the divine, a way of understanding the Creator through the study of His creation. But the Vatican's archives do not contain only the work of astronomers. They also hold the work of theologians who, in their quest for understanding, mapped the boundaries of the soul. In these texts, we find the diagrams of the cosmos as understood by early church thinkers. These early diagrams did not just show the heavens as a physical place, but as a spiritual one. The Earth, in these cosmologies, is not just a physical sphere suspended in space, but a place where the divine intersects with the human. The boundaries between heaven and earth are porous, and these diagrams are an attempt to capture the spiritual architecture of the universe. It is here that myth and reason blend together, where the scientific and the spiritual are not seen as opposing forces, but as two sides of the same coin. The Jesuits, in their charts of the stars, sought to understand the cosmos not just through mathematics and observation, but through faith. The early church thinkers in their diagrams sought to understand the divine order through the language of theology and geometry. Both approaches, though different in their methods, sought to understand the same thing: the nature of creation, the structure of the universe, and the place of humanity within it. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the Vatican's archives is not the knowledge contained within these maps and charts, but the reflection of humanity's longing to understand creation itself. These records, though centuries old, speak to a universal truth: that human beings, regardless of time or place, are driven by a deep need to understand the world around them. From the earliest maps of lost kingdoms to the intricate star charts of the Jesuits, these texts are not just records of the past, they're expressions of the eternal human quest for meaning. In many ways, the Vatican's archives are not just a repository of knowledge, but a mirror to humanity's soul. They reflect our yearning to make sense of the world, to find our place within it, and to understand the forces that govern the universe. The maps of vanished kingdoms are not just the remnants of ancient civilizations. They are the echoes of the human spirit, forever reaching out into the unknown. The star charts of the Jesuits are not just technical drawings. They're expressions of wonder, of awe, of the belief that the universe is a grand design, a creation that speaks of the divine. In this sense, the Vatican's archives are not just records of the past, but reflections of the human condition, a condition marked by a longing to understand the mysteries of the universe. The archives are a testament to our collective quest for knowledge, for understanding, and for connection with the divine. Perhaps it is this longing, this quest for meaning, that lies at the heart of all faiths. The belief that the heavens are not distant and unreachable, but that they are part of us, woven into the very fabric of our being. And so, as we stand before these ancient maps and star charts, we are reminded that every faith builds its heaven from the cartography of its own silence. Each map, each chart, each diagram is a reflection of humanity's eternal quest to understand creation. Whether through science or spirit, reason or myth, we seek the same thing: to understand the divine, to find our place in the universe, and to uncover the mysteries that lie beyond our reach. The Vatican's archives, with their carefully preserved maps and celestial charts, stand as a silent witness to this eternal quest. And perhaps, as we explore them, we too can begin to understand the unspoken truths that lie within them, truths that transcend time, space, and reason. For in the end, the greatest journey is not one of discovery, but one of reflection, a journey that takes us not outward, into the stars, but inward, into the heart of creation itself. Chapter 6. The Gatekeepers. In the dim light of the Vatican archives, there is a quiet reverence that permeates every corner of the room. The stone walls, lined with ancient manuscripts and forgotten texts, hum with the weight of centuries. The air, heavy with the scent of aged paper and wax, is still, save for the soft rustle of pages turning. Yet, amid this stillness, there are figures who move as if they themselves are part of the archives, those who tend to the silent world beneath the Vatican, guardians of the secrets held within. These are the archivists, the keepers of history, the men and women whose lives are entwined with the fate of knowledge itself. The archivists of the Vatican are not just caretakers of the past, they are the custodians of what is kept hidden. Their job is not to reveal the truths stored in the vaults of the archives, but to preserve them, protect them, and ensure that they remain locked away for as long as needed. They move through the corridors of the Archivum Secretum as shadows, their steps measured and deliberate, their actions performed with a reverence that borders on ritual. They wear white gloves as they handle the fragile ancient texts, their hands moving with care and precision. There is no haste, no urgency in their movements. Each gesture is calculated, as if they are aware of the sacred responsibility that rests on their shoulders. These archivists are not just individuals who catalogue and preserve history. They are the final line of defence between the past and the present, between what has been forgotten and what may one day be revealed. They know that they are the gatekeepers, the ones entrusted with the power to decide what truths will be passed down to the next generation, and which will remain sealed away in the shadows. The routine of the archivist is a quiet one. Their days are spent in solitude, cataloguing the treasures of the past, ensuring that each document is placed in its proper resting place. Some texts are meticulously restored, their pages mended and reborn, while others are left undisturbed, as though time has already done its work. The archivists move between the shelves with a quiet reverence, touching nothing more than what is necessary, handling the manuscripts as though they are sacred relics. They do not speak much, for there is no need. The silence of the archives is their language, and it is in this silence that they communicate with the past. But it is not just their routines that set them apart. It is the weight of the decisions they make. For each generation of archivists, the question remains, which truth will be passed on and which will remain hidden? What should the world be allowed to see, and what must be kept locked away, guarded by the silence of the archives? These questions are not easily answered. They are perhaps the most difficult decisions an archivist can make. In a way, the archivists are not just protectors of knowledge, they are the arbiters of history. Theirs is not the role of the historian, who seeks to interpret the past and bring it to light, but the role of the guardian, whose duty is to ensure that history remains intact, even when it must remain unseen. They know that there are some truths that are not ready to be revealed, that some knowledge may be too dangerous to be shared. They understand that in preserving these secrets, they are not merely keeping them hidden, but protecting the world from the weight of the unknown. The decision to lock away certain texts is not made lightly. It is not an act of censorship, but one of guardianship. The archivists are aware that by keeping some things hidden, they are allowing the world to continue without the burden of certain truths. They do not take this responsibility lightly, for they know that the power to reveal or conceal knowledge is a power that shapes the future. Each generation of archivists must decide what truths their successors will inherit, and this decision is made not just with knowledge, but with wisdom. They understand the delicate balance between history and mystery, between what should be known and what must remain a secret. The archivists are the stewards of that balance, and they carry the weight of this responsibility with a quiet dignity. As the days pass in the archives, the archivists move like shadows between the shelves, their work an ongoing meditation on the nature of truth. They do not question the knowledge that lies before them, for they understand that their role is not to interpret, but to preserve. And in this preservation, they are not just guarding the past, they are safeguarding the future. The sun sets outside the archives, casting long shadows across the stone floors. The light of day fades, and the quiet of the Vatican settles deeper into the vaults. One archivist, whose name has long since been forgotten, moves slowly toward the deepest chambers of the archives. His steps echo softly in the silence, the sound of his feet on the stone floors a gentle rhythm that matches the beat of his heart. As he approaches a door, he reaches for the key, turning it with a soft click. The door swings open with a creak, and the archivist steps inside, his face illuminated only by the flickering candlelight. Inside the room, the books and scrolls rest in their places, undisturbed. He runs his hand over the spines of the ancient texts, his fingers brushing the cool leather, and for a moment he stands still, as if listening to the whispers of the past. The room is quiet, save for the soft rustling of paper as he gently locks the door behind him. The candlelight flickers one last time before it dies, and in the darkness the archivist's figure fades from view. As the night deepens outside the archives, the city of Rome sleeps. The bells have long since stopped ringing, and the streets are empty. But in the silence of the Vatican, the archivist's work continues, quietly, reverently, with the weight of centuries pressing down on his shoulders. He has locked away another truth, another secret, for another day, and in that silence, the archives remain, waiting to be unlocked once more. Chapter 7. The Light Behind the Veil. There is a silence that settles over Rome at night, a silence unlike any other. The wind drifts softly through the narrow streets, carrying with it the faint echo of church bells long faded. The marble walls of the Vatican gleam faintly in the moonlight, and the city sleeps beneath a sky that has watched over it for 2,000 years. Beneath that stillness, deep under the weight of stone and time, the archives rest. Their corridors stretch endlessly, holding the dreams, fears, and memories of countless generations. But somewhere beyond those sealed doors, beyond the manuscripts and forgotten prayers, something greater stirs. The question that has lingered for centuries: what truth lies behind the veil? To wander the Archivum Secretum is to wander through the layers of human faith and doubt. Every sealed box, every unopened letter, every fragile scroll whispers not only of history, but of humanity's longing to understand what cannot be seen. The archives are not merely a repository of the Church's secrets. They are a mirror reflecting the human condition itself. For within these silent walls lies the record of everything that we have tried to preserve and everything that we have tried to hide. The deeper one descends into the archives, the more the physical world seems to fall away. The smell of parchment and dust gives way to something softer, more abstract, the scent of memory. It is as if the stone itself remembers. The air feels heavy, not only with the weight of centuries, but with the quiet ache of humanity's endless search for meaning. What if the Vatican's greatest secret is not a lost gospel, nor a forbidden book, but the truth that mystery itself is sacred? What if the purpose of these archives is not to hoard knowledge, but to protect the sanctity of not knowing? For every faith at its core is built not on certainty, but on wonder, on the trembling acceptance that there are things too vast, too luminous to be captured by words or ink. Perhaps that is what the archivists have always understood, that each sealed box, each locked door, each unbroken seal is an act of reverence, a silent acknowledgement that not all truths are meant to be revealed. Some knowledge exists to remind us of the boundaries of our understanding, to humble us before the infinite. The Archivum Secretum is not simply a vault of human knowledge. It is a temple of silence, a sanctuary where mystery is allowed to breathe. Through the centuries, popes, scholars, and seekers have added to this labyrinth, each generation leaving behind its own fragment of faith and fear. A map of a lost kingdom here, a letter from a condemned philosopher there, a prayer scrawled by a dying monk, each a reflection of its time, each a window into the soul of the world that created it. And as the centuries pass, the archives grow not only in size but in depth, a living monument to the ceaseless human attempt to grasp the divine. There are records here that speak of miracles and heresies, of love and betrayal, of empires that rose and fell beneath the shadow of the church. Yet, for all the knowledge contained within these walls, the greatest lesson they offer is not written on parchment or carved into stone. It lingers in the air, in the hush that fills the corridors, the understanding that truth is not always meant to be found, but to be felt. To stand within these halls is to feel the pulse of something eternal, not the authority of the church, but the rhythm of human longing. The archives hum softly with the prayers of the past, prayers for knowledge, for forgiveness, for meaning. And perhaps, as the centuries unfold, it is this longing, this quiet reaching toward the unknown, that the Vatican has sought to preserve above all else. Because what is faith, if not the act of looking beyond the visible, of believing in what cannot be seen? The archives, for all their secrets, remind us that the divine does not hide in the pages of forgotten books or in the locked drawers of history. It hides within the human heart, in its questions, its doubts, its yearning to touch eternity. At times, one might imagine an archivist walking alone through the empty halls, the flame of his candle flickering against the stone walls. His footsteps echo softly as he pauses before a sealed door, the bronze lock glinting faintly in the dim light. For a moment he hesitates, perhaps wondering what lies beyond, perhaps wondering if it should ever be opened. Then, with a small sigh, he turns the key and seals it once more. The door closes with a gentle click and the darkness folds in again. Outside, the moonlight washes over St. Peter's Square. The statues atop the colonnade stand like sentinels, their stone faces turned toward heaven. The fountains murmur softly, their waters shimmering under the night sky. The city is quiet now, a quiet that feels infinite. And somewhere beneath that silence the archives sleep. The candle has burned down to its wick, and the last archivist of the day locks the gate behind him. The flame flickers once, then fades. Darkness settles like a blessing. Perhaps that is how it was always meant to be, that some knowledge must rest, unspoken, and some mysteries must remain untouched. For even as humanity strives to illuminate every shadow, there is beauty in what is left unseen. And so, as the bells of midnight begin to toll across Rome, the vaults beneath the Vatican fall still once more. The world above dreams on, unaware of the secret sleeping beneath its feet. Not all doors are meant to open. Not all truths are meant to be told. Some exist only so that silence may endure. Good night, dear listener, and may the quiet keep you.